Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to yet another Destiny 2 Forsaken video. Today we'll be talking about the 5 best Forsaken exotic weapons that you need to get before the DLC. Now of course this video is purely opinion based and many of you may have a completely different list, which is totally fine. For this list, I took into consideration how effective and fun each weapon is in not only PvE but also in PvP. I also considered how strong these weapons are across different platforms like PC, because for all of you that don't know, PC weapons feel very different compared to console weapons. Now before we get started and jump into the countdown, let me know what your personal top 5 list looks like in the comments down below. Rank them from 5th to 1st. Now of course, don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here and want to see daily Destiny content. Starting off this list, we have a weapon that was probably everybody's first exotic in this Forsaken expansion. The weapon I'm talking about is the Ace of Spades, and it is acquired by completing Cade's exotic quest after you finish the Tangled Shore Forsaken storyline. Now this weapon is easy to get and it's super effective. Memento Mori gives 6 bullets of bonus damage at the start of the magazine, making it a killer in PvP, and it dominated for quite a long time until everyone started to get their hands on the Luna's Howl. Now PC on the other hand, this weapon is still extremely effective, as recoil control is much easier to manage on PC as opposed to something like PS4 or Xbox. I've been told by my friends that it's just as effective as the Not Forgotten and it's used a lot in competitive. In PvE, the story remains the same. It's a weapon that a lot of people use and it's still pretty solid. It's not used as much anymore though, simply because people are getting lots of God Roll legendary weapons and use other exotic power weapons. It's not taking a higher spot on the list simply because it's good in a few areas, but not amazing at any one specific thing except for PC competitive. Moving on to the 4th spot, we have a weapon that is just as dominant as any other God Roll shotgun, except this one is much more accessible in more than a couple of ways. The Chaperone is the Crucible's most deadly precision weapon, as it can map players from over 15 meters away when its Roadrunner perk is active. The reason why this weapon is ahead of so many other weapons is simply because it takes special ammo and can be used way more abundantly than a power weapon. It also is much more easy to acquire because it's from a quest that's fairly easy to complete once you're through with the Forsaken expansion storyline. It requires you to get a bunch of kills in the Crucible and a few other miscellaneous things, which all in all doesn't take much longer than a couple hours to complete. It's also considered by many to simply be the best Crucible shotgun in the game. Wasting time grinding for a God Roll legendary shotgun just isn't worth it when you got this thing laying around. And that is why it takes my number 4 spot. It's simply way too dominant in Crucible to not make this list. I use it all the time in quick play and competitive, and it feels so satisfying to predict a shotgunner pushing you, and when you leave him dead in his tracks before he even touches you, it's a great feeling. Now moving on down the list to the number 3 spot, we have a glorious exotic that is making its return from Destiny 1. Its sheer power has the capability of putting a smile on anyone's face, even my own. I mean, just look at the Thunderlord. This thing is mad scary looking and it's absolutely massive. In all seriousness though, this was a beloved exotic in Destiny 1 and a lot of people are glad it's back in the game's sequel. At first, people including myself knew it was going to be a good weapon, but it turned out to be even better and it absolutely melts bosses from nightfalls to raids. Now the fact that it's the hardest hitting arc weapon in the heavy slot is a massive bonus, and it's the only machine gun in the game currently. The weapon doesn't shine as much in PvP as it does when it's ripping through the darkness in PvE, but it still can hold its own. Now it may not seem powerful when you're going up only against players that are using the Luna's Howl and the Not Forgotten, which have very low times to kill, but it does give a pretty awesome feeling to the user. It's pretty forgiving, it has a ton of bullets, especially when you're picking up a heavy ammo brick, and for all of those reasons, that is why it's at my number 3 spot. For those that don't know, you can get this weapon from completing a quest acquired by Amanda Holiday. The quest will go away in a week's time on the 27th of November, and you guys need to make sure to get this quest done before it moves over to the exotic loot pool. The quest will then go away and it'll be much harder to acquire this weapon. As for the runner-up spot, you guys could have probably guessed this one was coming from a mile away, and it was bound to make this list, especially because it's coming from me of all people. Number 2 has got to go to my boy, the Queen Breaker's bro. Yup, it's no longer a bow, it is now a bro. Except not for me, as this little shitter doesn't want to drop no matter how many milestones I complete. This was my favorite exotic back in Destiny 1, right beside the likes of the Last Word. Now yes, it does suck that it's moved to the power slot and takes heavy ammo bricks instead of special, but they made up for this because the weapon shoots faster than back in Destiny 1, but it's still got that amazing aim assist that we all know and love. Now this is of course great for getting into gunfights with other Guardians, but not so much against regular PvE enemies. This means the weapon is an absolute stud in PvP, and with Trials likely returning with the launch of the Black Armory DLC, don't get too surprised if it gets a ton of usage there as well. Now I originally had this weapon at the number 4 spot because obviously it's not that useful or good in PvE, but that all changed after today. I went ahead and played 3 or 4 matches of Gambit for my milestones, and I was stunned at how effective the bro was at taking out anyone who had motes. Now, it almost seemed like all the Sleeper Simulant kids that were just abusing that weapon switched over from that weapon to the Queenbreaker's bow. I was admittedly kind of getting shit on, and it felt like you don't have much of a chance if you don't have this weapon in your power slot. It almost feels like a handicap. As a result of it being this dominant in both Gambit and PvP, as well as the possibility of this thing shining very brightly in Trials of the 9, this weapon has to take the number 2 spot on my list. Now before we reveal the weapon that takes the cake at the number 1 spot, we need to take a moment to acknowledge an honorable mention. Now this one goes out to the Wave Splitter. This is the first weapon I've mentioned so far in the video that is an all new exotic. Take that in. I think it's pretty funny, but anyways, let's move on. It's acquirable from a random exotic drop. This can be a milestone or even a random exotic engram. The main reason as to why it's not on this list and only an honorable mention is simply because it's a PlayStation exclusive weapon. Yep, I knew that one was coming. Anyways, the reason why I like it so much is because it feels like it can melt anyone at close to medium range with very little effort. Trace rifles are currently dominant in PvP, but they simply don't have enough ammo off spawn to be considered broken or OP, which is honestly a pretty good thing. In PvE, it's pretty decent, but definitely not worth using over the options that we already have. The thing that really pushes this weapon over the edge for me is the absolutely badass design of the weapon itself. It's probably one of my favorite weapon designs in the Destiny franchise. This weapon is a random exotic drop in case any of you guys were wondering. Now finally, to round off this list, we have the 1000 voices at the number 1 spot. This one should have been rather predictable, as all the other weapons in the game aren't really that effective at both PvP and PvE. If I just list off some of the other exotic weapons, especially the new ones that are not returning, you'll notice that none of them sound very good as a whole. Here's an example: the Cerberus 1, the Malfeasance, the Wishender, Black Talon. They're all pretty weak for the most part, if you kind of catch my drift here. The 1000 voices though is a weapon that really packs a punch. It's amazing in PvE as you can clear out large sections of enemies or focus all of its damage in a burst, or I guess on a shot, on one boss. It's at the number 1 spot because of this, and also because it's deadly in PvP. The amount of triples and quads I see people getting with just one burst always kind of baffles me. Now when I put the weapon to the test myself in PvP, I was frankly just shocked at how easy it was to get multi-kills. It's also a pretty fantastic option in Gambit, and believe it or not, I have run it a lot, and it does well against bosses, and even if you do invade, it can have the possibility of taking out a few people with just one shot. And that, my friends, is my list of the top 5 Forsaken exotic weapons that you need to get before the next DLC. Now I realize that getting exotics is difficult and obviously dependent on RNG, but a lot of these weapons are quest based, with the only exceptions coming from the Queenbreaker's bow and the 1k voices from the final raid chest. Again, if you guys have this top 5 list differently than me, let me know what you would change in the comments down below. I asked a bunch of my friends and even some clanmates, and honestly, I was surprised at how similar our top 5 lists were. The only difference is that they ranked some weapons ahead of mine or below mine, but for the most part, everybody was putting the same top 5 weapons, which is shocking, and it kind of makes me think, are the other Forsaken exotics just really that crap, or are the top 5 weapons just that good? And honestly, I'm not sure because I kind of see it both ways. But anyways, that is going to do it for the video though, guys. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, a like rating is very much appreciated. Subscribe for more daily Destiny 2 Forsaken content. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you all later. Peace.